Hello and welcome to Wehry Dads. I'm your host, Pete Wehry, with my co-host,
Dad, and that's me, second fiddle.
we're welcome to have Mike Lightfoot, several-time champion. Coach, go ahead.
I got
Coach Wehry, tell us about it.
Mike won a number of NAIA championships as well as a number of NCCAA championships when he was the head coach at Bethel. We're going to have him give his more biography. Better than that, than those things. And by the way, those things are pretty amazing. And I would say this: it's Adolph Rupp. Mike was the first guy to 300, 400, 500 wins. Only guy quicker was Adolph Rupp. Is that correct, Mike?
Yeah.
Well, that's Wikipedia page. I mean, that's you can't when it's Wikipedia. It's like
it's
like
true.
The gospel.
Wikipedia is true.
But better than that, and I'm going to say this, Mike.
The Wikipedia page created by his wife. Okay.
No,
yeah.
Jack, you could not have done that.
That is, but that sounds good.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the best thing about Mike. Mike loves God. Mike loves his wife. Mike loves his family. Mike is a phenomenal regional director for our ministry, Nation of Coaches. But even better than that is he loves God and he loves his friends. He's a great friend. He's been a personal friend of ours, our family. He's unbelievable in our staff. He gets it. He cares about people. And so, Mike, with that, I'm going to let PJ kind of roll where you want to go with that. But that's Mike Lightfoot. PJ's going to ask you a question, and you go in.
First of all, thank you. Thank you for coming on. Yeah. And tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about winning those championships, maybe some of your favorite stories, maybe things that stick out in your memory as important. But just give our listeners kind of that idea of who Mike Lightfoot is.
Wow, that's I can say that hopefully pretty quickly. Grew up here in Indiana, which for many people identify basketball with, and so growing up, I was just entrenched in basketball. My dad was a very good high school player. My uncle was a very good high school player. Everybody in my family had an orange ball, and so I just grew up being a part of that. And as I got older, then it becomes almost addictive. That I loved the game, I loved to play it. When I got into junior high and high school, I found out that my identity is in things I was good at, and basketball was one of those things that I found I was very good at. So I just put a lot of time and energy into it. I played for some amazing coaches. My high school coach played for Purdue with Rick Mount. Steve Longfellow had a major impact on me, even in the high school time, where I thought, I want to be like him. I want to coach high school basketball. I want to impact lives like he did. And then that brought me to a realization that college came up. And it was a great time for me. I ended up my senior year breaking my foot, and I lost a whole semester of my senior year. And that really was an awakening time for me spiritually, where I started realizing that basketball can't just be my identity. My identity has got to be more in my faith in Christ. But I was still stubborn, and God had to really work on me a little bit harder. I signed a scholarship to play at Tri-State University, a school in Indiana. And the very first day I broke my other foot. And that got my attention, where I finally was told that I probably wasn't going to play anymore. And those things were over. And when those things are stripped away from you as an 18-year-old, it gets you kind of thinking about what your life's really about and what the purpose is. And so it was pretty a low point where I finally had to surrender and say, God, you need to take over my life totally. And my identity no longer can just be in that orange sphere. It's got to be in something more. And from that point on, God just did some amazing things. He led me to Bethel College, college that had recruited me hard. And I ended up playing for an incredible coach, Homer Drew. And that is when the mission and my ministry mentality kind of grabbed hold of it. And I started to thinking that this could be a career that I could really be invested in, not just in the area of being a coach, but being a mentor and being a spiritual leader for the guys that I have impact in. So that's quickly kind of how God directed me in that path. There was steps along the way, and there's trials and tribulations on the way, but I was truly blessed to be impacted by great coaches who invested in me, not only on the court, but off the court. And so that was the model, PJ, that I started to try to follow and really tried to use as an example in my own personal life.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in, Pete.
Sure.
First of all, what some folks don't know is that we lived in Mishawaka, Indiana for 5 years, and that's where Mike grew up, right? What did you play at Marion or Mishawaka High School?
I played at a school just south of there. It was LaVille High School.
LaVille.
Yes.
Okay, which I umpired baseball at for folks out there that are really concerned. Okay, so know that area well.
They still talk about you, Pete, down there.
Yeah, I bet they do. They talked about me when I was doing it.
Narrow strike zone, they always said. Narrow strike zone.
But here's the cool thing. I interviewed Mike Lightfoot 20 years ago when I was writing a paper for my master's at Northland, which is amazing itself. Didn't really even know who he was. Got a really interesting because the truth is, for folks out there, you don't know this. Mike in Mishawaka, Bethel basketball was on the third page of the paper. And what folks don't know about, this is the South Bend Tribune. The front page of the South Bend Tribune sports page will always be Notre Dame football. It doesn't matter what time of year. Hey, it snowed on the stadium, but the glass is hanging in there good. Okay, that's going to be the story. The second page is going to be Notre Dame sports. The third page was always Bethel basketball. I've told people this 100 times. And that's how I knew Mike Lightfoot was. And actually, I was very probably insecurely intimidated that I'm going to talk to this guy that he's embarrassed with me, said, but he was like a legend. Games were on TV there, Channel 46. Yeah. Okay. I only say that because what I want to also go is Mike learned a lot of things with those broken feet, but he also, Mike could have coached D1. Mm-hmm. He would have gone with Homer, and he would have been a phenomenal assistant, then a head coach. And for those of you that are involved with college basketball, you need to understand this is sometimes the route people take because things occur. Mike, I know that's not your favorite story, but can you just share why God allowed you to stay at Bethel? What did he use for you to impact people? And you would have impacted people anywhere, but it was really a life decision, and he used it. Can you share that story?
Yeah, is a situation where I was on a fast track. Coach Drew gave me 2 years to get my master's, and then he was going to go back into the D1 world. He was at LSU before he came to Bethel. Coached with Del Brown, a legend down there. And so that was my plan. I was going to get my degree, my master's degree, so I can get that out of the way, and then I would really kind of follow the shoestrings of Coach Homer Drew, who ended up going to Valparaiso University, and the rest is history. But during that time, I had a tragic thing happen in my own personal life. I lost my sister in a car wreck. And, it was a plan that we had that she said, I will stay close to home and I will be a good daughter to mom and dad, and I'll help take care of them as they age. And you need to follow your passion. You need to be the best you can be and get out there in the college world and be successful and win a Division I national championship. Well, that all changed drastically when I found I had 2 nieces now to help take care of my wife, my mom, and everybody just pulled in and tried to turn those scars into stars. But it meant to me that I needed to be where I needed to be. And I didn't need to be at a bigger school. I needed to be where I was called to be. And that led me to stay home, and that led me to stay at Bethel College, which, you look back on it, it was God protecting me from myself. Because I think that if I would have went that route, I could have got sucked up in the world of coaching at D1 level. And with my passion and with my drive, I don't know where that would have taken me. Probably would have ruined my marriage, or it wouldn't have been as complete. And probably my sons would not have been able to experience the things that we did as a family that we wouldn't have been able to do at the D1 level. So through scars, and it's been a blessing.
Really, really cool quote. As I listen to this, obviously our theme for the year is build to last, and starting with you, we love this idea of interviewing solid men who have achieved lasting contributions, right? And so even as you're talking about this, this tragic moment in your life that you've taken scars and turned them into stars, what was important about that in order to focus on building something that mattered, something that lasted? Because it is amazing how many guys go on to be D1 coaches and they're there and then they're gone, and it's not history in the way that Homer Drew was history, right? Like these mattering moments. You have these flash in the pan kind of experiences where someone's ego gets gratified, and then decades later they're still talking about their 6 months as a D1 coach.
Yeah, I was about ready to break out into glory days, but that's what people do. Go ahead.
So obviously this is a big moment, and then feel free to expand on that further, how you continue to push on that. But talk to us about how that helped you to create something that mattered, because obviously you had that chance to go D1 and you chose to stay.
Yeah, I think as a job is what you're paid for, your calling is what you're made for. And for me, the made for was to try to invest in lives of people that I felt I could, because let's face it, the Division I rat race can really create a lot of problems, and dealing with players that may not have the same ministry or mission ideas that you do, and they're not going to buy in to maybe the things I'm trying to teach them and show them. So when we're able to work with people that have the same mindset, or at least understand where we're trying to go, rather than it becomes less of an ego issue and maybe to just a development and investment issue, then you can see where your calling actually plants seeds and good things happen. So for me, PJ, I think one of the things that I kept looking at was the way investing in others was really became a calling for me more than the coaching part. I think if you do those things right, investing in people's lives and trying to teach them and build character in their lives, the X's and O's and the wins and losses, they take care of themselves. There's nothing magical. You don't just sprinkle some magic dust on something and say, wow, it's going to be a winning product. But if you invest in people's lives and you build character and find the right individuals that want to buy into what you're trying to teach, then the rest takes care of itself. There's nothing magical that we did in our program over 30 years other than invest in lives, love on the guys, and try to build them up to be godly men.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in there, Mike. Tell everybody, I've said this, what was your theme? I will what more than any other coach?
Yeah, we're going to outlove everybody else. We're going to outlove, and that was our theme. I know it's great to see other people now adopting that theme, but that was our theme. Love wins. And we just felt like if we had love in our program, love for our teammates, sometimes people get caught up in what's in it for me. Do I really love my teammates? Do I really want to make sure that I care about them, even when they're idiots or they don't pass me the ball or they get more minutes than me? Am I going to love my teammates? And are my coaches invested in me? And do they really care about me as a person, or do they just think me as number 15? And I think that's probably a part of building a character, building a program that sometimes is a little bit unique, but I think it's also so important to have. When love is at the center of that, then everything else kind of falls in place.
Great. Something that there's obviously that focus on people. There's obviously that focus on investing in men and helping them grow, and you attribute a lot of your success to that. Are there any daily or weekly or perhaps even longer than that habits and rituals that were an important part of building to last?
Yeah, I think that waking up every morning and spending time in prayer, trying to figure out what's next. When you're dealing with 18 to 22-year-old people's lives, then what's next is very important. But as I did that, then I finally transitioned from what's next to what's now. And I think that every day when I went to work, I tried to focus on what's now, what is important in those people's lives that I'm trying to impact, my assistant coaches or my players, to focus in on the now and not look ahead to the product, but just go through the process of building a daily building block of a strong foundation. My theme that all my players will probably remember till their dying days is the wider the base, the higher the pyramid. And if we could build a wide base in what we're doing, with those first guys that were part of my teams to everybody on my last team, we just felt like the wider that base in my life, the more people I got involved, got invested in our program, the higher that pyramid would be and more success would be. So, we just talked a lot about every day is focusing on the now, not the product. We all wanted to win. We all wanted national championships. We love cutting down nets. But in order to do that, you got to focus in on the now and how we can make sure that we're putting out a product that's good every day.
And let me just do a follow-up question here. When you talk about the wider the base, can you give some examples of that?
Yeah, there's a lot of it. I think that as a coach, there's integral parts of that base. One, everybody knows is you got to have a great staff that's part of that base that wants to make sure that they're going to do everything they can to invest in lives. You just don't want one person doing that. I've got to be able to delegate to my assistant coaches that they're going to do a great job. The next thing is making sure their wives and their families are also a part of that base. We don't want to run this train without everybody on the same train track. And so that investment is our wives. So we made a family affair for not just my family, but for my assistants as well. We loaded up those buses that we rode. We took our families with us when we traveled on road trips and did those type of things. That was a very important. We wanted to make sure that base was part of our players seeing what a family looks like, what a parent looks like, what a husband looks like, what their
building to last.
What's that?
You're building to last, man. Yeah. That's good stuff.
And so we talked a lot about before practices that there's only been 2 or 3 of my players that have had a unfortunate divorce in their family. So we talked about the number one thing above our urinal in our locker room was find the right mate. And that, I forget about that from time to time, but my oldest son remembered a lot of those focus points. I guess we were trying to make sure they hit their target. But one of those things.
I'm glad that wasn't in the urinal.
We didn't want to we didn't want to make blind shots, but finding the right mate, that was part of that wide base. And then finally, the last part that I think so many coaches I deal with now are struggling with as they try to build their program is my administration on board? Do I have an athletic director, a president, people that I talk to all the time now are my former presidents and my former AD and my former dean of students, those people that said, we believe in that base. We've seen the product of that base, and we want to make sure that base continues. And so many times coaches don't have that. And so they're trying to do things on their own, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work. They don't feel that support. They're always looking over their shoulder. Am I going to please my AD? Am I pleasing my president? Am I doing what I'm supposed to do? And I had for most of my career a great base.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Thank you. Coach, I know you have something to say.
Well, the first one is this. Mike, as we have heard this and so forth, and we're talking about building the last, which is so evident in everything you're saying. There are I could go into 10 different directions because I know you so well and the things you've done, and I know how integral that Jackie has been to part of this, but we'll have her on some other time. Yeah. We don't want to give her too much
when you do that.
Yeah, we don't want too much street cred there for Jackie. But this is the 2 areas that I want our listeners to hear about in regards to building to last. You broached one, but then one I really want you to go into. The two I want you to dive into is, first of all, can you dive in about your boys and how you were able to integrate Bethel basketball and what you were doing to build to last in their life? Because you still have a phenomenal relationship with both boys. You are how many steps from Robbie's house?
85.
Folks, are you listening? 85 steps. Robbie wanted to be 86, but Jackie said no, only 85. 85 steps from going over to seeing your grandkids, your son and his wife, who you have phenomenal relationships. Your other son is actually working with Bryce Drew, aka that you all can hear me, and that if you've been listening, there's a connection there, right? But tell how you invested in your boys while you worked 80 hours a week, and then tell what God did through Bethel basketball that's impacted high school basketball, which honestly is really, careful how I say this, is you, Mike, you investing in your players, what God's done. So the two areas, your family, and then obviously high school coaching.
Well, I think one of the things that I try to talk to coaches about today, now that I look back and reflect, is making sure that their family is not collateral damage. And so the question is, well, how do you do that? What can I do to make sure that my family is not left behind? And I think that we learned that at an early age, that we're going to follow kind of a model. And as you look at the model that we followed was the Drew model, that we're going to make sure that our families stayed invested and connected, and we're not going to leave them behind. So with my boys, we did some things that may be a little bit different. We took a year and we just homeschooled and said, enough is enough. We're chasing our tails. We're just going to eliminate a lot of things, and we're just going to spend time together as a family. And looking back, that's some of the greatest memories. Is,
oh man, that's so good.
They did not mess. We were 38-2 that year that we homeschooled, and they did not miss. They were at every game.
Did you win the national championship that year?
Yes, we did. And
why didn't you homeschool the rest of the time? Like,
that was the secret. That was
the recipe. But go ahead.
The secret. Yeah, if we did it every year, we made it. Our home would have been destroyed. But I think that you just got to invest in your families first. And I work with a lot of coaches now that didn't do that. They're trying to climb a ladder, and they leave their family behind. And Jackie quickly recognized as the wife that if she didn't get on board, she's going to be off the board. She had to get on this train that's going. And so we did it as a family. And we modeled that after the Drews and what they did. And we saw the success and how it worked for them. And so we did that with our family. So when there was a game, there was a practice, there was a bus trip, the boys were always there. And most of the time they weren't with me. They were with them. They were with the players, but at the same time, the players got to see our relationship, and they just became one part of the family. You know, the guys having that time over at my house, or our boys would stay in the dorm with their players, and that was always kind of a highlight for them. So I think it's very important in any business and anything that you're doing. You need to get your family involved in what's going on. And it's sad when wives or husbands don't know what the other person is doing and the impact that they're making. And if they can understand your why and your purpose, I think they're more sensitive to saying, wow, I now understand why he's gone so much. When that player calls me at 2:00 in the morning, or someone calls me now 30 years later and said, Coach, I need some advice here. Those are the whys that we taught at a young age. So I think that's how we incorporated our boys involved in our lives so much, because we wanted that way. And so we felt that was important. And with that said, I think that success breeds success. I think that in any corporate world or any parenting role, when you see someone do something and it's pretty, it worked out pretty well. I saw Steve Longfellow and Homer Drew impact my life. And so I think what has happened is many of the guys that played for me had a lot of success. And so they said, you know what, I think I want to do this. And so in the state of Indiana, there's a lot of basketball, and it's high level. It's a lot of pressure, but it's also the head coach is really the leader of the community. He has a lot of voice impact. The average lifespan of a coach in Indiana is 2.7 years before they get fired. It's high profile, it's pressure, but with that, they have a lot of influence. And so I've been very fortunate that a lot of those guys that had success have continued that in their own careers. And many of them have chosen to be coaches. So it's really neat to go to a game now. I've been to tournaments where all 4 teams are my former players going against them. Or go to a state tournament and you don't know where to sit.
Did you cheer for the guy who listened to you the most in practice?
Yes,
scored the most points?
No, most points. Yeah, most points for sure.
Plus, minus.
It is so funny, though. There are many times I've sat dead set right in the middle.
Oh, you got to.
You have to, because the wives, the families, and the schools all know. And so,
Mike, I'm going to jump in here. Of those, you tell the number. How many you think are doing it? And can you? Then I need you to define it, because I want the audience to see this. How many of those do you have, and how many are head high school coaches?
Wow, I think we're over in the 40-something range. How many are the head coaches? Now you'd have to realize, Pete, that I did it for so long. Some of those guys have retired from coaching that have been head coaches. I've won state championships and have moved on to administration or out of it. But there are a lot. Let's just say there are a lot of guys that are head coaches.
Then I want you to hear, if you're a head coach high school, I want the audience to hear this. That means if you have 30 guys out there doing it, that's 450 kids, because there's 15 per team. If they're the head varsity coach, he's also impacting the JV and the freshman team. So you're talking about 450 times 3. So I think that's 1350, but I'm winging it on the math right there. There are 1,350 kids being daily influenced by coaches that Mike Lightfoot influenced, and that was not why he started this.
Well, that's a complete fresh 1350 every 4 years.
Yeah, and that's transient,
right?
Really good, because it's a new of that 1450. We don't know how many graduate and move in, but there's a consistent influence, and that is building to last. That's why you're on, Mike, because we were talking about, that was the illustration I used. Because when you mentor and disciple, you ought to impact one who's going to impact another. Yeah. And that is what's going on. And of all the things you've ever done, and I can't even comprehend all you've done. And I don't think I know who you are, and you don't want, but this is the biggest thing you've ever done, is you influenced one guy who's now influenced another. And there's a lot of those guys out there, Mike. And
well, there's a coaching tree. I think that I've been blessed with James Naismith, started the game of basketball. The only game was ever invented for ministry. He had someone that he mentored and did a lot with, and his name was John Wooden. John Wooden lived in Indiana, went to Purdue, coached here in South Bend, had a major impact on our community. But Wooden also had an impact on a guy named Dale Brown. Dale Brown then had an impact on Homer Drew. Homer Drew had an impact on me. And so then that coaching tree now is just passed down for my former players that are out there. So I always tell them they're the great grandkids of James Naismith. And
that's a great point, because this story isn't just about you.
Yeah.
But I think the main thing here, and that's not a compliment, but just this incredible realization of discipleship that's been passed down. And I think as we wrap up here, that's what I want to hit, because I think it's a little bit of a trolling question, but I think you understand the heart behind this. You're just a basketball coach, right? Why does that matter? So tell me, why does it matter that you were their coaches? Why? And I think the more important question than that is, because the way that you approach coaching, and you've referenced this a couple times, was really important, right? Because there's a lot of guys who are just basketball coaches and they accomplish nothing.
Yeah.
but it's the way that you approach coaching. So why does it matter to be someone's coach?
Well, I think one of the things that I had asked myself, and I think that evolved from time to time, what does it feel like to be coached by me? How does that feel? What is that like? I think my players would definitely say, wow, it was really hard. Because he was very, very, very demanding. And I look back on that, and I see these guys coaching, and I see that they are doing it the same way. A character building and investing in lives and trying to change or break bad habits in people's lives, hard.
Yes.
So I think that when I look at my life and things that we try to do, it was just trying to make people, grow people, allow people to dream dreams that they didn't think was possible, and achieve things that they didn't even think were even in their mindset. I think one of the things that a coach does is push people to the levels where they're going to accomplish greater things than they even thought they could. And behind a coach that does that, then you can look back and say, you know what? When I said I recruited kids and how good will you be, coach? I said, I'll let you know about 15 years. Because that's when you'll see your thumbprint on their lives.
Yeah.
Building to last is hard.
Yeah.
That's what building to last is not for the faint of heart. Building to last takes courage, and it's in all areas of life. It's like Dobson's book, Parenting Isn't for Cowards. And if you want those things to last, it's hard.
Been an absolute pleasure. Coach Lightfoot,
awesome.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. I hope that if someone watches this, they won't fall asleep too soon. They'll be able to lose.
I doubt it. I really doubt it.